Hey guys, Robert here, and I got with me a guy who I have been following since, well, his freeware games. A person who's
Really?
done yep,
Wow.
yep, reality on the
Oh
norm.
my God.
Yep,
Wow. All
yep, you
right.
coming up with the Reaper and all that,
Wow.
and
That
yep,
was almost exactly 20 years ago.
oh wow,
Because it was
yep,
right after 9/11 when I started
oh,
making those.
yep,
And it's August of 2021. So almost exactly 20 years ago.
yep. Also,
Wow. Okay.
Restorer of Eternity.
Ugh.
I
Yeah.
know. But yeah, a guy who has pretty much become the torchbearer for the classic point and click adventure games. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave Gilbert.
Hello. Hi.
So yeah, you are basically the main guy behind Wadjet games. You've done
Yeah.
so many games. The Blackwell Legacy. You've been helped also publish other games, of course, like Gemini Rue and Renaissance, right? That's I'm trying. Yep.
Resonance.
Resonance, like Resonance Cascade, right, right. I always mix it up with Renaissance for some reason. It's just like similar wording, but yeah. And then you've also done like big hits recently, like Unavowed has been probably one of your biggest hit successes.
Yeah, it really has.
Yep, and yeah. What got you started with adventure games? Why adventure games compared to shooters and all that?
I mean, I wouldn't know how to make a shooter. I guess like it's hard to say exactly what drew me to them. I know that I grew up playing them, like many adventure game devs have, and so I was kind of very familiar with the kind of tropes and language of adventure games, at least in terms of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger and learning to program on using BASIC, that's old school, right? I had an
Can't
Apple
get any more
II.
basic than basic.
But this was in the 80s, right? So I was like making Star Trek games in like, text
Ooh.
adventure form in BASIC. So like,
Mm-hmm.
like that's typically thing. You go through different rooms, you talk to characters, you do object based puzzles. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
grew up making. That's what I grew up playing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was around almost exactly 20 years ago. Almost exactly.
Oh.
August of 2021. This was I know because this is when the towers fell. 9/11, 2001. I live in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can.
Oh.
I had been
Yep.
let go of I've been laid off from this like really awful corporate job about a month previously.
Mm-hmm.
So I was unemployed, kind of like not wanting to do anything. I needed to get my mind off stuff, and I discovered Adventure Game Studio.
Oh,
And
yep.
I just decided, well, maybe I can just make a game. I was very familiar with adventure games, so it seemed like
Mm-hmm.
when I was looking for a way to kind of creatively vent,
Right.
I made a little game in a weekend. It was a game called The Repossessor, and it was about you played the Grim Reaper, which kind of says a lot about my state of mind. Yeah, my grandmother died that day, like on 9/11. It was a horrible time.
Right.
Anyway, don't mean to bring the mood down.
You're giving context. You're giving context.
Yes, that's it. And so I wrote it in like a weekend, and I put it on the Reality on the Norm and AGS forum. I'm like, here's my
For those
game.
of
What
you
do
who
you
don't
think?
know what Reality on the Norm is, it was
Yes. Okay.
yeah, it was a type of adventure game, like a project, community project. You would create, someone first done by Yahtzee himself. Yes,
Yep.
that
The first
Yahtzee.
one was done by Yahtzee. Yep.
Yep, Ben Crenshaw. And he came up with a bunch of initial stuff, and then people would create their own sprites and then leave it for anyone else to use it. And the Reaper you created, he stuck around the longest.
Yeah.
Because later people made him the
mayor's
HR's manager, assistant to the mayor, who was a zombie.
Yes. Well, it was kind of neat because like Yahtzee created one game, and the rule is you have to kind of leave all the assets that you made for your game. You need to make them publicly available. So all the characters, all of the animations, all the backgrounds. I think even music too. I'm not sure if it was original music. You had to
right.
And so someone else could take that and add to it, and kind of take their characters and like put them in your characters, or put them in their game. And I think in Yahtzee's game there was like a zombie gets brought to life. And in the end, he decides to run for mayor. And in my game, you were the Grim Reaper coming to collect the soul of the zombie, and the zombie convinces you to like become his campaign manager.
Right, exactly.
and so and then I just sort of left that out there, and then someone else, made it a game where the zombie won, he's mayor, and the Grim Reaper is now like his aide, like working in his office, and like it was just sort of very. And I made a few of those. There was a private detective game I made. There was like a surfer guy game I made, and it was sort of very gratifying to see like something I created and kind of seeing what other people did with it, and vice versa. Like, oh, I love this character. I'm gonna like do something cool with him, or her, or whatever. Right. And that was very, but there was only so long that project could last because.
And it's still kind of going. It's still kind of going,
but like more that it's impossible for someone new because like within 4 or 5 years there were like 60 games.
I've seen that.
Most of them are short, but at the same time, that's way too overwhelming for a lot of people. So,
I would say though, your best one though was definitely your last one, A Better Mousetrap. Kind of said a lot of stuff that you would utilize in at least one of your later games, the Two of a Kind.
Oh God, yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, that Two of a Kind was actually it was a freeware game, and it was the first time I ever worked with a team of people where I kind of led a project. And what was fascinating about that, we were kind of matched up with, if you wanted to take part in this jam, you had to kind of. I guess this is how jams work now. You kind of submit your name, what you want your role to be, and then they kind of match you up. And so I got put together with this team of people, and I had this silly idea, and we made the game. And it was the first time, we were one of the, I think there was only 2 games, including ours, that actually made it to the deadline, that actually submitted the game on time. And I was very proud of that. And it's like, I actually took like 2 days off of work to work on it. And it was such an incredible experience. And I think that that is what it really made me think, maybe I can do this for real. Like, I don't know. Like, I led a project and maybe I could do it for real. So I love Two of a Kind. It's a silly game, but we made it in a month. So considering we had a month to make it is actually very impressive.
Oh, definitely impressive. Now, during Purity of the Surf, you introduced a ghost character that would eventually lead into Proto Joey. You had
oh my God, wow, you've done your research.
Yeah, I remember that. That's how quick my mind worked.
There was like this little blue speck, and if you kept clicking on it, like the main character would be like, I don't know, what are you clicking on? There's nothing there. And if you clicked on it enough times, you would like move towards the camera, and it was like Joey. I'd forgotten all about that. Oh my God.
And that led into Bestower of Eternity, which was a prototype. We'll just say prototype for your later games.
I guess you could call it a prototype. It was kind of it was like an extremely rough draft. Definitely. Blackwell Legacy, which ended like a third of the way through.
Right when everything got good. But now, in that original one, you originally were going to have it be like a merry-go-round or something like that, or circus or some circus, or
so long ago.
But it was like something that you wouldn't expect this to be in Central Park.
It was the carousel. In Central Park.
Oh, there is a carousel there. I've not been there, so okay, so. Yeah, but eventually you changed it to a dog part when you got to Blackwell. But what was like the cause of the deaths and everything related with?
It was exactly the same story.
Exactly the same thing.
Story. Yeah.
All right.
Except by the time I made Blackwell Legacy, I was looking after my friend's dog, and I would sometimes take the dog out at night, and there was a dog walking park, and once I took the dog there at night, and it was so spooky, it was so creepy there at night. And it just always stuck with me. And so I decided to change when I made the real commercial game. I just thought like it would just be a cooler, more evocative location,
definitely,
especially at nighttime. So I just kind of took that. A lot of everything in Blackwell or most of my games is like inspired by something from my life.
But before we get to Blackwell, you also their first actual paid game where you actually I'm trying to find the right word. Commercial game. Exactly. Commercial game was the Shivah, which was taken off of you being Jewish. You took some of your knowledge from that and basically made a game off of this rabbi who decides to become a bit of a detective. And one of your first doing voice acting, if I recall, and give you guys introducing everyone to Abe Goldfarb, who I'll be having on tomorrow.
That's so cool, by the way. That's so cool.
Yep. Yeah, seriously, he is such a great talent.
I've known him since we were like 13, 14. And
Mhm.
even back then, like he had such a passion for acting and for just entertaining in general. Like
Yeah.
he wanted to make you laugh even then. And so it's no surprise that he's the one. I mean, we met because we did plays together, but it's no surprise that he's the one that actually became an actor. Anyway, you can save all this for actually talking to Abe tomorrow. We're talking about me now.
Yep, we're talking about you right now.
Yeah.
But with the Shivah, I mean, it was short, but it was like one set in the world of Blackwell and Unavowed and all that. But it was just so much of an interesting story. You're like, where are we going with this? You put in some concepts like you would later do, like stuff you said for which Blackwell, like you didn't do a notebook, but I
had the clues combined.
Yep, the
I think
clues.
you combined like one clue, and that was
one
it.
or two clues. Yeah, you would do computer searches where you were introduced to Tomo, which you still haven't done anything with.
I have no idea who that is.
Oh, that's not what your commentary says.
I don't know.
But yeah, you would do stuff like that, and then eventually that led into Blackwell, which one thing I like about the Blackwell games, each one has its own distinct art style because you had a different artist on board and everything. And first one was, who did the first one? It was
the backgrounds was a guy who called himself Chris Fimo, or Finstra, I think his name was.
Right.
And he did a game. Oh my God, I forgot what it was called. It was an AGI style game, freeware, where it took place like in the Arctic. I don't remember. So long ago.
Enclosure.
Yeah, it was that. Oh my!
That was it. Oh my gosh, I love that game. Enclosure. It's just because it feels like a horror movie and everything. Then you find out later, oh, it's Scooby Doo-esque. But before you get to that point, it is very atmospheric and everything. I didn't know that was the same guy.
Yeah, it was him. It originally was a guy named Tom, but he kind of just disappeared.
Right. I've heard that story before. Yep.
And then, so I was kind of like, this was nuts. Like, because back then, no one took me seriously. No one even took, if you said you wanted to sell an AGS game, no one took that seriously either.
Right. Back then it was heresy practically.
So it's like, but I was determined. I'm like, I need to get this done by like this date or I am screwed. Cause like I kind of, when I started, I was like, I've got this amount of time before I'm broke and I need to get this game out.
Right.
And so I was just like desperately looking for someone to do the rest of the backgrounds. And Blackwell Legacy is a tiny game. It's a small game. Thank God it was tiny. Thank God it was a small game. If it was a larger game, I never would have gotten it done.
Oh yeah.
With the resources that I had at the time. But
work with what you've got.
Yeah, and the sprites were done by Ian Scheffler. Herculean effort.
Yep.
The Apprentice back in the day. I think it was The Apprentice. Was that what it was called?
Oh, that one too. Oh yeah. Yep. I would definitely remember those as well. Very good game. Too bad they never finished the trilogy.
Yeah, I mean Ian is good doing like really well, like doing work that pays him.
Right. But it's just one of those things. That's one of the downsides with freeware adventure games. When they set up a series, they go through it and eventually just. Yeah,
but it's hard to blame them. It's
no, it is. I don't blame them at all.
Yeah,
but as Blackwell went, then you had Ivy. Aaron
Robinson.
Aaron Robinson, right for Unbound and all that, which is a prequel.
Yeah.
And then
I'm forever grateful. Because I made Unbound because originally it
was supposed to be part of. Flashbacks
you
for the third game. Yep.
Have you done your research, sir?
Yep.
Yeah. It was supposed to be part of the third game, and there were some flashbacks to this other character, Lauren.
Yep.
And I
love Lauren, by the way. Thank
you. I love her too. And so I just sort of I cut them out for time, and then when I realized, oh crap, like I've been taking so long, to get my next game ready. I'm running out of money. What do I do? And I just thought, well, I've got like this vague idea of these flashbacks. Maybe I can make a game out of that and make something really cheap just to get it out. And so that's what I did. And when I say I made it really cheap, I made it embarrassingly cheap.
You could tell in some regards, but in other regards, it feels just as well.
Erin, like she was a college kid off for the summer. She was a fan, and it's like
she did Spooks.
She did Spooks, yeah. And so she was willing to work for what I offered her. Fortunately, again, small project.
Right.
I think you can get away with this more if it's a small project that only takes like a month or two. If you're asking someone to work for that cheap for years.
Oh, no. You're ripping them off.
I think I'm pretty good at generating enthusiasm, but there's only so far that can go. Again, having a small, tiny project worked to my favor. And so I got this game out, and it kind of like helped keep me going for, until I could get the next game out. That was, but that's sort of the funny thing, because you say you love Lauren, and people tell me that Unbound is their favorite game.
Oh yeah, and I can see why. Because
and
it's so different.
I told that game like out of my butt. Like in 4, I had to get this done. I got it done in like 3.5 months. It's the quickest I've ever worked on anything. I mean, except for the Shivah, but that was a joke. Right. This was the fastest I've ever gotten a game done, and it's like I just threw it together. Here. Done.
Now, what was the original thing with the flashbacks? Was that just supposed to be just a little bit of stuff with her and Joey, and then the Countess, and that would have been it, or would you have set up?
Honestly, I don't remember. It tied like it was the whatchamacallit, like the connection was the Countess, because you would see her, back then versus in the present day. So that was like the main connection there.
Right.
So it would have been a little bit more cohesive, I think, if you had both of them together. But I think they work just as fine apart.
Oh, definitely. Because I could definitely tell at some points where, like the whole when Joey says we have trouble, I could have seen immediately to the flashback then. But, I mean, if I could, I would pause the game there, go and do a bit of Unbound, and go right back. But that's way too much of a hassle for me. But
I think I kind of like I turned Unbound into an actual Blackwell game where you had like other
cases and all that.
And I got to actually include Joseph Mitchell, which I thought was cool.
Yep.
That was weird. That was cool, including him. Like I was obsessed with like the story of Joseph Mitchell back in the day. Like,
you got me interested into it.
That's so cool. Like,
yeah, I'm sure you probably got others interested.
I was hoping. I was hoping people would. I hope they would realize that Joseph Mitchell and Joseph Gould were real people.
Yep.
And they would get like research, like read about them as well. Like that's what I hoped. But people don't realize they're real people. They are.
Oh, and they're very fascinating. But now
you worked there for 30 years and never wrote. That's insane. That's not realistic. It happened.
Oh yeah. Now, speaking with Erin, that's not the only time you worked with her there. You also published her game Puzzlebots.
Yep. Puzzlebots.
Which that was good. And I don't even see many people talk about it very much. I know it was a reboot or a stop, like a playoff of one of her freeware games on Nanobots.
Nanobots was kind of like the prototype, and we made Puzzlebots.
Like what was the development with that? I mean, was it mostly her? Like what involvement did you have besides the voice acting, of course?
I mean, I liked working with Erin, and I asked if she wanted to like expand it into something bigger, and she said okay, and we made the game. And
that's simple, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was that simple. We just made the game. I mean, it was an interesting project because, like, I made AGS do things that it had never done. It was never designed to do, and I'm still amazed.
You're still doing that. It's still being done, like Strangeland, even.
Well, no, I'm talking like it was never designed for like just. I mean, Strangeland was like all visual effects, but it still looks and plays like an AGS game. But Puzzlebots does not play like a typical AGS game.
Oh, right.
Loading.
Yep. There you go. There you are.
There you are. Oh, now you're back.
Yep. You're the one who froze on my end.
You froze on my end too. But
the puzzle elements, though, right?
It was just fascinating because, like, actually having levels and like, 5 robots to control, each having different abilities. And I mean, I remember running into the AGS room object number limit. I think you can only have like 25 or 30 objects in a room. And, like each of those levels had so many individual things. And I remember doing just insane stuff. Like there was this one level where you had to burn a haystack.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Then so like, okay, once the haystack is gone, like I just sort of took that object number and like changed the graphic, and it became something that you find later in the level. So it's like, I don't know what you find, a helmet, but it's actually the game thinks it's the haystack. Like I did some bizarre stuff with that game. And it was, I kind of broke the laws of physics to make that happen. But it was fun. And Aaron is such a brilliant writer and designer, and like and the art style was just so.
Oh yeah, I love that art
and
style.
cute. And it was so sweet. It's a sweet game. It's a sweet.
That was the first one you did that was a more of a 2D type of style, not like a retro pixel style, right? With the games, like.
I mean, 2D. I mean,
no. What I mean is 2D animated, sort of, compared to.
They're all 2D animated.
I'm trying to find
high resolution.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the right way of putting it. I'm saying compared to, say, the pixel styles of a lot of the other games.
Oh yeah, wasn't pixel style. You're right.
Yeah, so you're right. High resolution, which
I mean, high resolution by 640 by 480 is high resolution.
Well, yeah, I mean, people keep forgetting that about adventure games that the limited, windows and everything for them all. It's like you're so used to them being, you think they're widescreen or full frame, but you're like, wait a second. But you also did Emerald City Confidential. That's another game I really love. It was just so much cleverness with. I'm just gushing about your work, but I love all your games.
Okay, keep it coming. I'm good. I'm fine with that.
But just your take on the Wizard of Oz and everything. It's just so.
I loved the Oz books as a kid, and so. I think what was funny, and I kind of maybe annoyed the publisher, is that, like, for me, Oz wasn't just the Wizard of Oz. Like, there was, it's not just Dorothy, Tin Man, Scarecrow, and but like for me, there's all these other characters. And
so many.
And so, like, I was, I wanted to write, TikTok, or I wanted to write, Trot and Captain Bill, or all these other characters that I thought were really cool. And meanwhile, like, the publisher was like, "Who's this person?" Like,
exactly. Who's this? Who's
like,
that?
Why is the lion barely in the game? I'm like,
show them Return to Oz.
The lion's barely, the lion's dumb. Like, he's barely in the Oz books, really.
I know. Boy, did you make him like a wow? I
made him like an evil lawyer or something like that.
Exactly, and it's just like, wow, I wanted to hate him.
I had fun making that one. It was the biggest budget I've ever had, and I was working with an actual publisher, which has never happened. So it was like someone actually paying me to make a game. It was a very different experience. I think the most interesting thing about it was that, like, Play First was a very casual focused company, and so they really wanted a game more for that audience, and maybe I wasn't the right guy to do that, and so we kind of, like, they were like, I was hoping they would kind of show me how to make it more casual, while they were hoping that I already knew.
Oh no! So that tells you what they probably know about adventure game people as well. It's like,
I think the cool thing about it is that, like, we the interesting thing about it is, like, the first 2 hours of the game are very handholdy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because they're very focused on, like, that. The way it worked back then was you play for 2 hours, then the game says, now you got to pay, and so they really focus on making those 2 hours, like, really, really, good. And so we added all the casualness to those 2 hours, because that's what they were really focused on. And then, like, once you get out of, like, Emerald City, then it becomes more of a traditional adventure game, because then I was like, then there was less publisher interference, as it were.
Right.
So I was kind of allowed free reign at that point. But I think, like, we ended up with something that was kind of maybe too casual for the adventure audience, but yet still maybe too advanced for the casual audience. So
I can see that.
It was a hard line to walk, but we managed to not please anybody. But I think it worked for Play First, because they took all that experience, and then they made a game called Avenue Flow, which was, like, one of their best sellers in a long time. So, like, they learned a lot from it. I learned a lot from the process. I think it was the first game that taught me to, like, really tone down the dialogue.
Right. There were sometimes it could get a little wordy.
It was worse. I had to cut a lot of it.
Oh wow!
But the problem with it was, like, so much of it, when a game is so when its foundation is so steeped in dialogue. It's like, okay, you cut this bit, but that means this bit over here doesn't make any sense. So you got to edit that, and then you break something else, when, like, all the dialogue is so so deeply connected, then it's really hard to edit it and like extricate.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And so there's still a lot of it had to remain there. So I learned a lot about like editing and also keeping in mind the player. That was also something that the game taught me. So I learned a lot from that project. So yeah, but I wouldn't like, if I ever work with a publisher again, it would be to like make sure we're both on the same page about what we're making.
Now, one other game before we get into your bigger ones, the more obscure ones that you helped publish was The New Guys.
Oh yeah.
Now I played the original one first, and I finally put, well, kind of neat too, really, when you look at the story for the one that you helped publish. It was because it was a direct sequel. But I found it was an interesting game, very unique type of humor and everything.
Very different from what I usually publish.
Exactly, but hey, if you didn't do it and they had someone else do it, I can't think of anyone else better, right?
I love it, and I remember playing it knowing it would be a hard sell, because I mean wrestling isn't exactly the most like nerd friendly genre, and also the game, I bet the game maybe doesn't look as nice in still images.
Oh, definitely not.
When you see it in motion, like it's so fluid. Like Chris Burton is an amazing animator, and so like when the characters are in motion, they are just so fluid and so great. And it has some of the best like action-oriented puzzles.
Oh yeah,
action-charged puzzle bits that I've ever seen in any game. And I played it, and I'm like, I love this. Unfortunately, it was mostly done, and so aside from the voice acting, and Chris Burton played the three main characters, so the majority of it I didn't even have to do. Right. So it's like my investment was so minimal. Like, I'm like, why not? Let's see what happens. Exactly. And so I love it. I know it's extremely hard sell. It's a very hard sell.
Definitely, especially when you have that one wrestler. If you have an image of him, they're one of the rival wrestler, who's basically the whole joke is he's a still image who's bouncing around. He's like very poorly drawn. That guy.
He's literally like a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But if you see a still image of that,
but I'm not quite sure anyone else.
I don't. Well, yeah, when you see a still of it, you're not going to get it. You have to actually play it to get it. You're like,
I get it.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Like I think, oh God, he had the funniest voice too. Like he was, I don't know. Yeah, there's
like that. Yeah, kind of like, hey.
I still love Abe in that game. He did
what role did he do in that?
Smiley Joe. He was the bad
Smiley
guy.
Joe. Oh,
he did a Hannibal Lecter impression. Like,
definitely. Yep.
Hello, brain.
I completely forgot that was him because I'm so used to the guy doing it in the first one was just the guy.
Oh, that was Chris Burton doing basically every single role in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he did such a good job doing it, making it his own, but still sounding close enough to what came before.
Yeah, Chris is the sweetest guy. He went on to make the Adventure Creator utility for Unity, and so yeah, he's doing that. And that's like, a lot of people use Adventure Creator. I'm still stuck using AGS. So, but
I've heard. But back to Blackwell, though. I mean, as the game went on, though, like originally this was supposed to be you have one more game, but you decided to condense it down into you cut it, and then we only, like you said, you had one other game you wanted to do, but then you decided the story wasn't going where, so you cut it.
It was more like, it's funny because now I have all these rosy, nostalgic, fuzzy feelings for Blackwell. But like I would look in old design notebooks of when I was making it, and I would just be like, I hate this. I hate these characters. I hate Blackwell. Oh my God. Like all this like total self-loathing. Like, because I found that each game, like I found it harder and harder to make their shtick fresh and interesting.
Right.
And like, I kind of knew that it would wear out its welcome sooner than later. And
that's a good point.
I kind of wanted to make, I wanted to draw a line under it, make new things. And I knew that, the cold capitalist practical reality was that the first game was made when I was a much weaker designer and had much less time and money and clout to work with.
Right.
And so it's a much worse game than the later ones are. And
that's
so
fair,
when like I realized when I was making Blackwell Epiphany, and I thought it was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no matter how good this is, someone's going to see this and they're not going to play. They're going to start with the first one. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
most likely they'll bounce off of it because it's not as
Yeah,
good.
that's a good point.
And so like I couldn't help but notice, like when I look at the sales data, like the first one is still the best seller. Like all the this number of players for the first one's here, there's a big drop off. And then if they continued on to the third one, though, they most likely played the rest of them.
Right.
But I couldn't deny that like they'd go to the first one, they'd be like, ugh, they bounce off of it because, it was.
Oh yeah.
Know? It was not just the first Blackwell game. It was one of my first commercial games ever. I made all my mistakes there. So, and I just couldn't deny that. And I couldn't help but feel like I could make this. This is so good, but it's never going to do as well as it could because it's still
true. Because you're just going to keep on getting people to want to go back to the start. And
it's still shackled to that first game. And that's why I always sell them now as a set.
Right.
Because I want people to, if they bought it, they own it, they might as well continue. Right.
True.
And so I just kind of like, and there was that. I did want to like start something new without all the baggage of, a long running series. And so I just decided, now is the time. Now that like, which is sort of funny because I felt like I finally got what made a good Blackwell game with Deception. I'm like,
I would say, yeah.
And then I thought, okay, now I get it. Now I'm going to end it.
I know, that's just how it goes. But yeah.
So I ended it with the next one, but I went out on what I think is a high.
Oh,
and
definitely.
So,
it was such a tearjerker. Just
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yep. Now, when you obviously now, given what the rules you set up in the lore for Blackwell, like, if something happens and a ghost spirit guide is no longer capable of doing their duty, whoever they help prior would be the one who becomes the next spirit guide.
Yeah.
Did you know you were going to bring back the little girl?
At the time, no, I didn't. At the time, I did not. No. But when I decided, like, I was trying to think of what powers each of the Unavowed members would have. And I'm like, maybe it would be cool if, like, one of the companions was a bestower. And then, like, I just sort of like, well, who else could it be? And I'm like, this is a cool idea. People are
it is, but seeing it from a different perspective, especially seeing how that goes, and we don't see it. So I'm trying to just, in my mind, rationalize it from the concept of what Rosa and Joey had to deal with. But I'm like, how would we see that? What we got from Unavowed, like the ghost being that wicked and all that stuff. Like, how would Rosa have handled it? I don't think
that wicked.
No, not wicked, but like when the first house, when they're stuck. How some of them, like, they're trying to keep them calm and everything. Rosa never had to deal with anything like that.
My hand wavy explanation, which never really got into the game. I kind of like my original headcanon for the backstory was that, like, because of what happened at the end of Epiphany, the supernatural world has just gotten a lot stronger.
Actually, that makes sense, yeah.
Rosa never would have had to encounter that. But I never really did get into that in Unavowed because I'm like, no, that's too Lori. Lori. Yeah, Lori.
Too fan servicey.
A little bit. It's just I wanted to, like, not, I didn't want you to have to have played the other games.
Right.
To appreciate Unavowed. Like the references, like, if you know who KK, if you played Epiphany and you know who Kendra is, you'll get a huge kick out of it.
Oh, which I did.
But if you didn't, then you could still enjoy it.
Right.
And I think there's one line about where it's not like bestowers hand out business cards or anything. Like, and like if you played Blackwell Deception, you're like, wait, they totally do. And like just that kind of thing. I didn't want it to be. I didn't want to have to rely on knowing Blackwell.
Right. You didn't want to put in a. You didn't want to have to James Bob and put a Joey cameo in or something.
Yeah, because like I had this whole set of dialogue that I ended up cutting where they talked about, things were so much calmer until that crazy blizzard, and then
that would have been nice for a little thing, but I get it.
And then it's like, but then you'll think that there's something about that blizzard, and I'm like, no, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, so you don't want to. You gotta think, like you said, think about the players.
That's a little headcanon for you if you're wondering.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Because like you said, you got to think about the players, and you got to think about the new players. You can't always think about the old players, which I think a lot of games these days sometimes focus too much on one or the other. And I think I'm saying games in general. You know what I mean? Where they kind of.
There's a wonderful book. I don't know if you're a Doctor Who fan. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. And there's a book written by Russell T Davies called A Writer's Tale. Ooh. And he talks about something very interesting where he always tries to write from the point of view of, like, the person watching it,
Mm-hmm.
and like where is their emotional investment right now.
Yeah.
And he wrote something very interesting where he talked about when he wrote how when he was writing David Tennant's last scene,
Mm-hmm.
spoiler, David Tennant's doctor.
I don't want to go.
Yes. But originally he wrote it like the TARDIS appears on some random person's spaceship and the spaceship's about to crash. And and the doctor like sacrifices himself to save this person.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked the idea of he's just sacrificing himself for like some random stranger. He would do that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking, again, he thought, yeah, that is a very 10th Doctor way to go. But as a fan, I don't like that. And so instead, he makes him sacrifice himself for someone we actually do care about.
Yeah.
And if you
of course,
if you watched it, it's so effective. Like because you
it is. Guy. Once you hear the clunk, that's the 3 knocks. And he's like,
4 knocks, yeah.
Of course, 4 knocks.
Once you see, like, of course he has to sacrifice himself for this guy.
But
and that always hit me. Like you gotta think about what the audience is thinking and what the audience is feeling and what their emotional investment is. And I always try to write like that. And so,
very much.
Trying to go into like the lorgasmic details of where the magic comes from and how it connects to Blackwell. Like
that's just for one type of player.
Even if you did play Blackwell, you probably don't care. So I always try to write with that in mind.
Yeah, and I think that's a very smart way that a lot of people for anything, video games, TV, comic books, all of that should be. Oh, speaking of comic books. Wasn't Unavowed originally supposed to be a Vertigo thing, or at least a general gist?
I mean, let me take a drip of water.
Yep, go ahead.
It's a funny story. I was at GDC one year, and I got an email from Warner Brothers. And
that must have been a shocker.
And they said, could we have a meeting? And I had no idea why. And this was like 7 years ago. So I think I could talk about it now. And like, okay, like I had no idea what it was for, but whatever, I don't know if you watch BoJack, but the character, always take the meeting, always take the meeting, like Mr. Peanut Butter says. So I went, and like I signed this, like I sat down, and they just sort of looked at me and like, sorry for the secrecy, but they wanted to do they were a fan of my work, and they wanted to do like low res pixel art games based on some Vertigo stuff. And I'm just like, wait, really? Like, the kind of stuff I make. And I showed them screenshots like, yes, exactly like this.
Ooh.
And I'm like, okay, like that sounds awesome. And they just, again, we're not sure what, like we talked about like possibly Sandman or like, and then we're kind of leaning towards Hellblazer because Sandman is such the production of like one person's vision. And that's really hard to recreate. So, like, but Hellblazer was written by so many different people.
Oh, yep.
And at the time,
John Constantine I kind of see that a little bit with it.
And so, we kind of left it at that. And then I told Ben, the artist I work with, about it. And I'm just like, could you just take a day and draw some like, Vertigo inspired stuff in our style? And so he drew that image that I posted on Twitter years later. And nothing really came of it. Like they asked me to write a pitch document, like with a budget, and I did. And I was advised to like think of what I would need and double it because it's Warner Brothers, right?
Right.
So I did that, and like they never really followed up. But at the same time, I didn't really follow up either. And maybe if I did, maybe it would have happened. But at the time, we were still working on Shardlight. I was thinking of what I wanted to do next. I think we were finishing Technobabylon going into Shardlight.
All right.
And I had already worked with a publisher, and I'm just like, I want to go through that again. And I had a feeling I had a feeling that it would be like much more of a pain than I thought it would. So I'm like, well, if they call me and really want me to do it, I'll do it.
Right.
But so I didn't follow up with them. Maybe I should have, who knows?
Who
but
knows?
We ended up doing, I still loved that image that Ben created, like the red sky, and all that. And I always had this idea for an urban fantasy game anyway. And I always had this idea of like starting off with an exorcism and then going from there. That was the extent of the idea. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do that in this style that you made, just maybe higher resolution. So that's what we did.
Right, right. And I gotta say, also what I love best about with Unavowed is the Dragon Age origin type of stuff that gives very good replay value for it. I mean, if I
Steal from
remember
the
right,
best.
yep, if I remember right, didn't that come a bit later in the development? The general idea of the origin, different
Nope.
origins. Oh
Nope,
no,
nope.
that was
At the
different from the
very,
beginning.
very beginning, I wanted to do that straight away. I wasn't sure I'd be able to pull off the male and female thing, but we did, and I'm glad. I'm glad
Yeah,
we were able to pull that off. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be.
right.
At least
It
not for
probably helped
me.
that you don't have the voice acting until we find out, until later on. Which
I
that
made that.
twist.
I made that conscious choice to not have voice acting because it also enabled me to kind of go crazy with the customization. But yeah, the fact that I could do male and female,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing I wouldn't have to voice it later, I could go
Right.
nuts. So I
Right.
already, because I took what was already going to be a lot of lines and I doubled them. So yeah, and the twist actually did come to me later.
Ah,
I didn't start the game knowing that was going to happen,
ah.
and I'm very proud that I managed to make it all fit together.
Yeah,
I
because
was
I'm just
very
like, you
proud
did
of
not see that because you were so falling for this one way, and then eventually you find out, wait, and because you're also, because the way the origins play out, it
it.
plays out very differently. You think like, oh no, this
So let's not
innocent
give it
person.
away. Let's not
Oh no,
give it
no,
away.
okay, okay. But what I was gonna say was, you just think one thing, and then you're like, ooh, ooh,
I'm kind of glad I didn't start designing knowing that there was going to be like a twist, because I think I would have been
put
too
more hints.
proud of being clever. And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem where you're trying
Oh
to like,
yeah. When you have a twist, sometimes you want to build to the twist as opposed to like you don't want to have it come out of nowhere
like when
entirely.
as I was working on it and I realized this is where it was going,
Exactly.
like, then I'm like, oh, like it really. And
The
I think
gradual.
Stephen
Yeah.
King wrote about this too. Like he rarely writes knowing what's going to happen next, because he's like,
Mhm.
if I don't know what's going to happen, the audience won't either.
Oh
And
yeah.
like it's not the easiest way to write, and it's not the most organized way to write.
No, definitely not. I've
Especially
done that.
with games, because there's just so much more involved. But I find it's the best way for me personally to write, because I keep myself interested,
Mhm.
and so yeah, it's just worked for me. I'm really glad everything that we were hoping to do with Unavowed, we actually pulled it off. Like everything I wanted to do, we managed to do, and I'm very, very happy about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, it keeps them surprising me that Starlight was one of your produced games. Like that kept them feeling like that was one of the developed ones because Ben Chandler was involved and everything. It just
Yeah.
felt like
Well, I was just sort of the
Yeah.
publisher. I mean, it was a Wadjet game in that, like, I like Francisco was on salary while he was making it,
right.
and so it is like a Wadjet owned and developed game. It just wasn't written. It's not a Dave Gilbert game.
Okay, that's why it was. I mean, I kind of looked at it like it is, but yeah, you weren't as heavily involved,
That's sort of the interesting thing about even the games we published, because I don't remember where I read it, but someone said that they all feel like they could have come from. They all feel like they came from the same studio.
That's exactly what. How it is.
I think it's because they all kind of fall under the category of Dave likes this, and I don't know. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to how or why I pick things. I've been more right than wrong.
Oh yeah, your track record's been very good.
Thank you.
Yep. Now, before we get into anything upcoming, I just want to ask, what is your opinion about with the current state of adventure games? And for example, like people like to say that Telltale resurrected it. Would you and I'm always of the belief of it did to a point, and then it just made it kind of stale again for a bit. At least its method of it.
I'm never. I hate this question. I would never like be so hubristic as to say like, here's what's wrong with adventure games, or here's what adventure games do. Because like I feel very strongly that the genre of adventure games is so broad. There's so many different types of game of there's so many different ways to make an adventure game. And there's so many different, like, it's like saying what makes a good movie. Like,
right.
Does the movie have to be like this? Adventure game is a medium for telling a story, and there's many different ways to tell a story.
Oh yeah, Unavowed proved that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Like there's many different ways to tell make a narrative game. You have like Oxenfree, you have Firewatch, you have like Gone Home, you have My Stuff, you have like just so many different ways of telling stories in an interactive way that like if people say, oh, adventure games are doing this now, it's like,
Right.
What do you mean? Like, yeah, this one game is doing this, maybe.
Oh yeah.
But then there's like, whoops, there's a whole bunch over here that are doing something else. So I never feel comfortable answering that question in any way that makes sense, because it's like, it's too broad. It's too broad.
True.
Too broad a question. So yeah.
True. Because I just say that because I've heard so many people talk about like what Telltale did, and I do agree. Telltale
I
really
love
got
most
me.
of Telltale stuff.
Oh, I do. Although I gotta say, I really love the King Quest reboot. No one ever talks about that anymore.
Neither did the publishers.
Yeah, unfortunately, because it is incredible. And
They buried it. I never understood it. They just
and what didn't help was, of course, you want to get the epilogue, you have to buy the whole set. If you bought this particular version, you didn't get the epilogue. Then it's
I didn't even know there was an epilogue.
Oh yeah, there was, because it's basically after what happened to King Graham. You play as his granddaughter for a short adventure.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. If you get the complete version, you get that, and it's just a nice little send off at everything, and wraps up some loose ends.
Nice. I mean, I enjoyed them. I think if you take them as their own individual thing, they're great.
Oh yeah.
Like if they were not going to be the thing that brought back adventure games, because that's too much pressure for anyone.
Definitely.
Any game, any studio, any developer who says we're bringing back adventure games is full of it. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I've
been saying that about every game, every like major adventure game since like The Longest Journey in 1999.
Oh boy. Yep.
This is going to be the game that brings back adventure. And it never
I specifically say it might renew interest is what I would say.
I mean,
even bring back. Well,
I never like saying that, because it's like I don't know. It's just
okay. No, I get you. I get you.
Like putting the whole genre on your shoulders is
right.
A little hubristic, I would say.
True. I'm
just saying, because don't worry about making a good adventure game.
I'm just saying, because you have stuff like FMV games that renewed after some games started coming, and now you're seeing more of them now, mostly because
the technology is there.
Oh yeah.
You used to have to build whole studios to do that stuff.
I know, and nowadays you have blue screen.
I could pull that curtain and like do a FMV game. You know,
exactly.
Do it.
Yeah, when you can do it for a game jam. Like, I don't know, but the Space Quest Historian, he was part of a one where he was the main guy and everything. And it was just like,
I was in it.
Oh yeah, you were.
I was Satan.
Yep, which not your first time technically.
Nope. He always includes Satan somewhere in all of his jam games, and I'm always happy to do it for him, because it's
you did such a good job in Blackwell Legacy with the devil or demon.
that was not the same voice. I forgot about that. God. That was basically me doing my Strong Bad impression.
Strong Bad.
That was evil Strong Bad is what he spoke a little slower. That was what it was.
But yeah, you just recently you published and released Strangelands, and now you're working on Old Skies and Nighthawks, right? Is the other one, right?
Yeah.
And well, care to talk about Old Skies? You were, before we got started, you were going, talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Before you realized you hadn't recorded.
Yep.
It's kind of had an interesting kind of long history to get to where I am now. Technically, I've been working on it since early 2020. Also, technically, I've only been working on it since April of this year. And that might make let me explain. It started off as a jam game in 1990. Oh my God.
That far off?
What year is it? Oh my God.
2019.
2019. Oh God.
It happens.
This is what happens when you hit 40. You forget what decade it is. Because like everything like past like 1990 was basically yesterday.
Hey, after last year, after everything that happened last year, you might start to think like, what is it at 2030 or something, the way it feels?
Basically it was a jam game. And I made it in Unity using 3D, using Adventure Creator, made by Chris Burton. Thank you, Chris.
Right.
And it was this little, 5-minute long game I made as a little time travel story. And I had kind of been suffering through a lot of writer's block since Unavowed had come out. And this was kind of a way to kind of shake myself out of that. And I really enjoyed making it. And it was this little dinky thing, but like I felt so close to it, and I always feel like I need to be called to making something. Like I had made a kind of passing attempt at an Unavowed sequel, which didn't really go anywhere because I felt like I was only making it because there was a bit of a demand for it because the original did so well. And I'm like, well, it makes sense to do another one. So
Well, yeah,
let's do another one. But I didn't really feel like I was making it because I really wanted to. And
right.
I can't really work.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Rarely do those things turn out well unless you get that spark.
Yeah, and so then I just like, this just isn't working. But then I remembered that jam game I made, and I'm like, you know what? There's there's something there. I really enjoyed making that, and I'm going to take a day and open up my design notebook and see what I can do with it. And then within like a morning, I had designed what I thought was like the first third of the game. I'm like, okay, this seems to be where the muse is taking me.
Right.
Excuse me.
No problem.
And so I decided to work on that instead. And that was February of 2020. And then the pandemic hit.
Oof.
And
long way to lose creative juices.
Yeah. And then like any love I had for anything I was making died. Like it was so stressful. Like we were homeschooling our child. I couldn't focus. Turned out I had undiagnosed ADHD, like a lot of people during last year. And I'm sure that was a big part of it too.
Right.
But I mean, I had to, it's like the thing that sucks when you're blocked and not able to focus, but your livelihood depends on you being able to produce.
Right.
You gotta barrel through. And I'm like, I hate everything I'm doing. I hate this,
Yeah.
But I was drawn to it. I'm just going to hope that, 15 years worth of doing this has just sort of created some instincts where I can work on autopilot and hopefully I'll make something decent. And I just kept going through like the whole year, the summer into fall. And I just like every little bit of it, I had to drag out. Like it was so slow because I was just, I didn't want to work on it. I just didn't like anything I made. And then
trust me, I've been there with some writing stuff.
And like I started, like I had like a panic attack at one point. Like it was it was scary. And I took a break. Like then with Strangeland coming along was kind of a blessing because then I could just say, okay, I'll just focus on this. Like I just kind of helped with the voice acting for that for like about 2 months. And then I did the voice acting for Summer Days at Hero U by the Coles.
Oh, yep.
And I worked on that. And I just sort of like, I was able to like not think about Old Skies for a while. And then so when that all was done, I'm like, I looked at Old Skies. I'm like, okay, maybe it turns out I like this. I played it. I still just didn't like it.
Last feeling you want to feel.
Yeah. And I'm just like, you know what? I need to get other people's opinions. So I put it in front of a few people whose opinion I trust, and I knew they'd be straight with me and be like, what do you think? Be honest. And like, is this really awful? Is this worth pursuing? And their response was that it wasn't terrible. It just didn't feel like something I would actually write. And I thought that was interesting because it's like, well, I didn't feel like myself when I was writing it.
Right.
And I was just thinking about it like, this is all wrong. This is everything about it is wrong. And I decided to take a complete break from it for about a month and a half, like where I just focused on like up until that point, my wife and I always had to make a deal every morning of who was going to work that day because we had to help our daughter with her school all day. And so I just like, you know what, like Janet, you do your work. I'm just going to focus on our daughter. And like, I am not going to do any of my work and I'm just going to take a break. And I spoke to some narrative consultants about like, is this salvageable? And a few interesting things I learned is that, like I feel like there's a reason when anyone creates anything. This is getting a little esoteric, but we're almost
go right ahead.
We're an hour into this, so now we're getting in deeper, right?
Right. Go right ahead.
So I feel like anyone who creates something is creating it for a reason. They're drawn to create something for a reason. They might not know what it is. And so they might miss the mark entirely. And if you really need to figure out why you're drawn to creating a certain thing. And I was drawn to creating a time travel story because originally, like my problem was that the story was too big and too epic. And it started off as like, okay, this time travel agent who like takes people into the past,
Right.
because they pay money to like change something or observe something,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's very sweet. And then you help, like the beginning of the game is you help someone do that, and then something goes horribly wrong, and that sort of kicks off the story. And it was very telling that after I got to the bit where you help this client, then after that, I was just stuck. Like I just could not seem to progress beyond that point. And it just sort of hit me as like, well, maybe this story should be about that. Because I seem to be really drawn to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And was sort of similar to Blackwell, where it's like, you find these ghosts and you help them them confront their past. And this is sort of taking that and making it literal. You're bringing people into the past to like for a reason.
Right.
You're helping them, confront their past. Like it's actually kind of sweet. And I'm like, there's 100 ways that could go wrong.
Oh yeah, it's all the thing about the rules. Like, what are the rules of time travel?
There's 100 ways there's 100 ways, 100 different stories you could tell just with that. And I'm just thinking, like, this is more interesting. This is something I really like.
Right.
And I am just gonna burn it to the ground and make that game instead.
Right.
And like I took like a couple of, like I salvaged some bits from the original design. But I never worked so hard on making a game smaller. Right. Like I took like a third of, like I cut out 2/3 of what I had made and made like a short mission out of it. Intending to make like more missions. And I just wanted to see if it worked, and it worked. And I liked it. And then I took a couple of weeks and I just wrote some basic ideas for potential missions. And I'm like, I like this a lot. Like this is, I'm really enjoying it. And so I found myself like really liking what I was doing. And that I started production on the, Old Skies 2.0, or technically 3.0 if you count the jam game.
Right.
I started that in April. And so it feels like a lot of time wasted, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad that I figured it out.
Oh yeah.
And I think maybe if it wasn't for the pandemic, I might have gotten there sooner. But I really like what the game is now and what it's trying to say and like what it's trying to do. I feel a lot more connected to it. I feel like it's something like it's a theme that's worth exploring. And
definitely.
I'm kind of, it goes off the rails occasionally and does some interesting things, but I'm having fun with it. And I think that's what was lacking. I just wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't having fun with it. I didn't even like the main character, and now I do. Now I like the main character a lot. And so, that's kind of where Old Skies is now. And Ben kind of took the opportunity to like redo his art style as well. So,
this is where you're going a bit more with the high definition from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, he always wanted to go higher def. But I think like, because I was redoing everything anyway, he just thought, well, maybe I'll take the time and like, redo how I'm doing the art, because he's incredibly diligent and professional, and how dare he?
Oh yeah, because he has his own style, but seeing it done in a high def, it's like, oh my god, completely different, but in a good way. It's that like
it's still Ben. It's still Ben, because like Ben still knows what good art looks like, so it's not going to look bad. I think of this as like, his first game he did for me was Blackwell Deception.
Right.
And you saw what the characters looked like in there. So this is basically Blackwell Deception. So he's only going to get better from here. So it takes a bit longer for him to do everything. But that's fine, because it's taking me a bit longer to design. So it's all working out quite well.
Yep. Now, here's the question, though. Is this set in the Blackwell universe, or is it a separate thing?
It is. It is. But it's a completely different genre, so the references are just going to be a lot more subtle.
Right.
I think I posted some screenshots the other day where there's a poster on a wall for Trollgate the movie. And just
little things like that. It doesn't spell it out, but...
Yeah. And there's there's a newspaper box that says the Village Eye on it. There's like little nods like that, and there's going to be references, but it's not going to be as quite overt as Blackwell to Unavowed was, because that was kind of the same genre.
Yep.
So
I gotta say, with Unavowed, when you mentioned the Village Eye, I was like, wait a second. It just dawned on me. I'm like, wait, did Rosa say it closed down? I don't think she ever did. Did that happen after?
She probably did, yeah. Actually, no, I don't remember. I remember like I remember the boss got. I don't remember. I think it did. I think it did close down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like, now be careful. You might end up doing a crossover or something, especially if time travel now. Just
Well, I'm not saying anything. You know.
Because I'm just imagining. It's just a little fan throwing
I will
out
say
there.
there's a character in the 1920s named Mitchell Santina. That's all I'll say.
But I'm just gonna say though, I'm just imagining. Say something happens that involves Joey. End up.
I will never include a live action version of Joey in it.
I'm not saying. Oh no, I'm not saying.
I'll just say that right now. People keep asking me if Joey's going to show up. I will never want him to show up. I think that would. I would think that would cheapen the character a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying as a fan, fan service thing. If Joey ever just somehow got roped up and in the past, and just saw himself, because like I say that ending though. Having it right on the bridge and dumping ashes on the cars down below again.
I remember coming up with that ending. Like there were so many things that I didn't end up doing, but I came up with that ending, I think, while I was writing Convergence, and I knew it couldn't end any other way.
Oh yeah.
Because when I thought of it, like I was like, yeah, that. Like I had that in my head. I'm like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And I think I came up with that in like 2007, and then I finally got to write that scene in 2000.
Oh yeah, take it.
It took 7 years to when I finally wrote it, and I heard Abe say the lines. It was like,
that was
this. There was like sometimes my instincts aren't very good, but in that case, like
that one, especially again losing the two things that make Joey.
The two iconic things.
Yeah, the head and the tie. Because the suit is fine, but but you need the tie for the suit to be complete. You don't have the tie.
Thank you. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, his two iconic things just sort of disappeared. Yeah.
Yep. Although they still say, besides that, one of my favorite moments, my favorite interacting with a ghost was Joey with the girl in the dance club. The ghost in the dance.
Everyone loves that. Everyone loves.
I know. I just love that. Even right down to the whole.
I was so worried. I was so worried it would come across as creepy. No, and I was like, oh my God, this is
endearing. I know. There's just so many times where it just makes it even more tragic when she leaves. It's just like, oh wow! Imagine if. Yeah. Now, of course, also the fact that Joey did kind of have to BS his way through a little, but that charm of his, you're like.
That's all Abe.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely.
You'll find out tomorrow.
Yep. But yeah, it's just now with Nightwing. No, not wait. The other game you're working on.
Nighthawks.
Nightwing. I'm saying Nightwing, Nighthawk. Again, Has anyone ever made that mistake or by the first? Nighthawk. I got it right the first time. I botched it the second time.
Okay.
How is that going?
It's going good. I mean, the good thing about it is that Richard has made games before, and he's made this type of game before. So for the most part, aside from like maybe course correcting a couple of things, like it's not even course correcting. It's like most of the time I'm hands off, and Richard just does his thing. He's such a brilliant writer that like I don't have to really worry, and he's he knows his stuff, and I just kind of leave him to it. And when I say course correcting, it's more like, all right, maybe we could like, let's focus on this aspect of the game for now. Like, because I really want to see this in action. So can we focus on this? And he says, okay. And he focuses on that instead, that kind of stuff. For the most part, like, he's so good at this. And I don't know much about visual novels or like the Fallen London style of gameplay. I enjoy them, but I know so little about it. But he does. This is his wheelhouse. So I just sort of, I leave him to it. And the great thing about it is that like he's, he without fail, he releases an update on Kickstarter every month. And it's always informative. It's not just BS stuff. Like he's
like some people. Yeah.
I don't know if you've read them, but like there's always something interesting, because he has so many amazing thoughts and opinions on how
trust me, I prefer people who do any crowdfunding to do it that way. And speaking of his crowdfunding, do you ever see that as doing that more in the future, or? Oh
well, the thing about Nighthawks funding, I'm revealing a little secret here.
Go ahead.
He told me about it. Richard pitched me the idea just as Unavowed was wrapping up, and I was kind of exhausted. And it was like, hey, do you want to do a Kickstarter campaign for this? He told me the idea, and I'm like, dude, I can barely remember to like put on shoes. But but I like the idea, and I adore Richard. I adore him. And so, we've been friends for a very long time. And so, he said he wanted to do a Kickstarter for it. And like with that money, he could pay himself and pay Ben for his time. And I'm just thinking, well, like, and I spoke to him about it. I said, okay, so like this actually is an incredibly good deal for me. You realize that, right? Because like I basically am getting a game published and I have to put very little money into it. And then I get, a royalty once it's released. Like, you realize like this is really good for me, right? And he's like, he wanted like the Wadjet brand. And I guess like I've got enough clout or whatever. I'm hubristic enough to believe that, all right, I do have a brand name. And he mostly wanted that for the Kickstarter campaign. And I also said I have zero energy to like do a Kickstarter campaign, but he also wanted it to be an American company. I think at the time you had to be an American company to be on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
So I said, okay, here's what we can do. I'll set it up. And I'll give you access to it. And I'll also give you access to my Twitter account. And because I feel very strongly, and I noticed this with Strangeland. I feel very strongly that when you're trying to promote something, if you don't have like a personal connection to it, then it's going to come across as sounding very insincere.
Right.
Like I noticed even with the tweets about Strangeland, when I posted something about Strangeland versus when like James Spanos posted about Strangeland, his tweets went like incredibly viral.
Right.
Because they were sincere. They were really sincere. Me, I could tweet about Strangeland. Like I want it to sell because I'm the publisher, but I'm never going to have that same level of connection that like the actual developers of the game.
Right.
It just won't happen. It's just not there.
Oh yeah, like when you were doing stuff for Unavowed and everything, you really get that out. And it's like
you can't fake it. And so I said, Richard, it should come from you. So you make the tweets. Like you can use like the brand name of Wadjet and you use my Twitter account to tweet about it. And so it did. And we met the funding goal. So it's like, oh crap, we got to make the game.
Of course, that's kind of the hope.
So it's like, would I do it again? I don't know, because I technically really didn't do it the first time.
True.
I did nothing.
That's understandable.
It was all Richard, even though when he posted an update, it says from Dave Gilbert. He always, and he even apologizes. He's like, at the beginning of every update, he's like, hello, this is not Dave Gilbert. And it's like,
that's still good though. At least,
like
some people
typical publisher taking credit for everyone's work,
Yep. Now, one other thing you've also been getting more notoriety for is doing voicing overs, helping with the voiceover stuff like Cassie Rain and stuff. How does that feel? You've been you're climbing up there with like the likes of the guys who do Telltale stuff. You're kind of almost in my eyes, you are. In my eyes, it feels like you are, where you're kind of becoming go-to for that type of stuff.
I wish. I mean, I don't
feel that way.
I don't get to do as much of it as I would like. I love doing it. Actually, though, I did say no to one voiceover project back in like December, because I had just come off of Strangeland and Hero U, and that was like when I was in like peak, oh my god, like Old Sky sucks, and feel stressed out, mode. And so getting another thing on top of that, I'm like, I got to do some self-care. I can't do anymore. I'm sorry, Andrew Goulding. It's his game looks amazing. Oh my god, I'm forgetting the name of it. Sorry, it's a sci-fi game. Looks really cool. It's by Brossom, Andrew Goulding. Brossom, like BR awesome. Brossom.
I'll look that.
I'm blanking on the game's name, and I feel like a moron. Anyway, so I said no to doing the voiceover for that because I was a little stressed at the time. But that's just it. I can say no if I want to. It's not my livelihood.
Right.
I just love doing it. Working with the voice actors is like my favorite thing in the world to do.
Warp Frontier, is that the game?
That's it. Warp Frontier.
Yep,
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, Andrew, if you're listening, or watching. I don't know if this is going to be a podcast.
It might. I haven't done that yet. Right now, it's just going to be on YouTube so far. So
okay.
Just share it out, retweet it whenever you get a chance.
The problem with it being on YouTube is like when I go out for a walk and I want to listen, it's like the phone can't go into rest mode. Or else it stops. That's the
Right.
only problem. 'Cause
Right. I gotta start doing it in podcast form. Now that I'm doing more interviews, because
or
beforehand
just
it was just
release like the audio version that people
yeah,
can.
I should do
Anyway,
that too. Yeah, but yeah.
digression. Yeah. So it started off when I did the Shivah. It was originally a freeware game, and then
Yep.
when I made it commercial, I was thinking what could I do to give it more value, and
Mhm.
well, voice acting. And I was part of an improv troupe back then,
Mhm.
and Abe I had known since we went to summer camp at
Yep.
13, and so I asked Abe, I
Yep.
paid nothing. I paid nothing.
Pizza. You pay him pizza, if I
paid him in
remember.
pizza. I paid you an exposure. It was, but there were small projects. They were, again, keeping it small. And then I did that for like a few games, and then I started paying. I had to start paying because I felt like I should.
Right.
As I started to get a little more successful, I'm like, I should start paying voice acting. Like, oh god, Danny Marco, the lady who played Lauren Blackwell.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the funniest thing. I'm amazed she didn't slap me on the face because, like, I met her at this Halloween party at an audio.
Yep.
Weirdly
Yep.
enough.
Right. I've heard the story in the
Oh, you
commentary.
have?
You were
Okay.
in the commentary. You were like, you were a bitch, right? Hey, want to be in my game?
Well, kind of no, but I heard her talking, and she had this like wonderful smoky voice, and
Yep.
I was just like, "Hey, like, I love your voice. Like, I'm in this game. I think you'd be great for it. I can't pay you when I work out of my bedroom. Is it okay?" I was thinking later, like, why didn't she slap me in the face? Like, but she said yes, and the rest is history. Like, I can't, I felt really bad. I ran into her years later, and I just like,
Yep.
well, when I hired her for Blackwell Epiphany, she had a cameo in that, and
Yep.
I'm like, I can pay you this time, yay!
Yep.
And she just sort of shrugged. She's like, I don't know why I said yes either. But
Probably
anyway,
just the idea of like.
I guess like my point is that I like to make it fun, and I think
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not having, I want to have fun with it, and I think the actors have fun.
Oh
and
yeah,
I kind
going
of,
up with the videos you've released, it definitely shows you're having fun.
that's the point. I like showing that as a way to be like, hey, look at me. Look at me direct. I'm good at it. Hire me. Yeah, especially with the pandemic, and I was kind of always very elitist about must work in the New York studio because they're the professional place. And whereas before I used to work out of my bedroom, but then for some reason the acoustics in there were great.
Right.
And then we moved to this place, and the acoustics sucked. So I moved to the studio. But then when I started working remotely with actors during the pandemic, like the quality of the booths are pretty good for the most part. So I'm like, I'm a convert now. I'm like, yeah, this is great. Let's work. And it just really expanded the voice actors I can work with. So
I know you got game Mike Pollock, Dr. Eggman, involved.
Pollock lives in New York. I've worked with him before. I've worked with him
yeah.
before in the studio.
I loved him in Unavowed and in Strangeland.
It's so good. Like,
I know.
so the first time I worked with Mike, I was kind of like amazed because normally I schedule 2 hours. And I figured, okay, usually it takes them at least 1 hour, but I'm going to pay him for the full 2 hours. Mike comes in, he does like everything what normally would take an actor to like an hour to do. He's in and out in 20 minutes. And I'm just thinking, like, what did I just paid for 2 hours? And I'm like, you know what? Then I edited it later, and every take was perfect. I didn't have to like do a lot of editing, and because it was short, because he did it all, bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, oh, that, now I see, what you pay for, because like that was just fantastic. I love working with him.
Definitely. I mean, I just always remember how he used to do for fans, like, give me something to say as Robotnik, and I'll do it. And then fans started having him do that meme, and then he's like, oh, once you realize what the meme was, he's like, nope.
Mike I've never watched him as Robotnik, so I think like I never talked to him about that. But I noticed the way he like he responds to the fans, like whenever there's some Sonic news and they're like, "Oh, you got screwed, man! That you should have been hired. You should have been in the movie." Like he responds with such grace.
Oh yeah.
Like he just says, "Look,
that's what I'm saying for it to reach that much, for him to be like." Because it's that whole stupendous as usual, but when you hear it, it sounds like they're saying it's because the Long John Bailey, the actor, when he did Robotnik for Adventure of Sonic the Hedgehog, his pronunciation was very different. It was like it sounded like he was
I've
saying.
never watched any.
Oh, I'm just saying no. But once Mike realized, oh, that's why you're having me do it. Yeah, he kind of, and it has a lot about Mike though that he was ready to do it until he found
Mike,
it out.
it's the job. Like he
Oh,
gets,
I know.
he's like,
Oh,
I'll
I
do
know.
Robotnik when they pay me to do Robotnik.
Oh
And
yeah.
like,
Oh no, I
he's
agree.
a professional. Like he's,
yeah, but yeah.
And but I love like going back to me.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, man.
This is about you. This is
I
about
love you, Mike, but this is not your interview. Yeah, no, I kind of love the just the art of and techniques of voice acting and voice actors. I went to like a workshop with Jennifer Hale, and it was.
Yeah, I've met her twice.
She's amazing and brilliant. And she taught me so much because I wanted to learn more about how to be a director. And I even asked her, I said, what is something a director does that you hate? And the first thing she said was, they talk too much. Because like if when an actor is in the zone and they're really feeling it and they're really there, and then like every director feels like they have to jump in and say something. And she's like, no, let them go.
Right.
And I'm like, and I learned so much. Like I get better performances out of people the less work I do. And I just noticed this, like, and I don't know, like I think I'm pretty good at it, and I love working with the actors. Oh yeah. I consider myself kind of like an advocate for voice acting because I want actors to be treated well, and I like to treat them well. And I mean, I know that James talked to you about what happened with Strangeland. So like I just love them. I love voice actors. It's whenever I go to any game event, it's always the voice actors I end up hanging out with.
Oh yeah, and it's just I mean, I'm a big advocate for voice actors too. I've met so many in this, especially when you see like when you hear about with Billy West with Space Jam when he was told right at the red carpet, "Oh, why are you here?" It's like because he's voicing Bugs Bunny.
Yeah,
like, and that, I don't blame him for having a dislike for celebrity voices. At least the ones that are just hired for marquee value. If they're hired because they can do the role, let them do the role. But
wow, yeah,
but I mean, the actors you got, always love them. All the performances feel so real. Yeah, especially Abe, of course.
Abe, I adore the man, and
I mean,
like Strangeland, he gave one of the most like I just emotion. Like I was never been so shook by anything.
I was feeling it. I could just imagine just even the other takes that weren't used. I could just imagine what he was
like
bringing.
I sometimes feel like the thing about voice acting or acting in general, and what I admire so much about it is that like I think Jennifer Hale described it like a voice actor is like a close-up camera where it's like it picks up everything. It's very intimate. Like you can, like if I'm angry and I try to hide it, you can tell I'm angry.
Oh yeah.
And that's like the thing about voice acting is like, most people when they think be angry, they want to yell. It's like no. Because people you need to hide it. And often what you do, you're connecting to something. And when he was doing like some of the more like emotional laden scenes, he was connecting to something really, really dark, and I could tell. And it was like this beautiful bubble that he created from like something dark. Yeah. And I was so scared to like say something, like because I didn't want this to burst. Right. And like but even still, so I'm like I'm just speaking very softly. I'm like, that was good. Could you put the emphasis on this word, please? And Abe just says, he's like, yeah, don't worry. Like I wouldn't be a good actor if I couldn't maintain that while you gave me direction, as long as it's within reason. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
But yeah, no, I live for that kind of stuff. Like when the voice actor even takes my own words and like does something with them that I don't expect, I live for it. I just adore it. Like I want them to do. I don't want them to make it sound like it's in my head. I want them to surprise me. And I think that's what a lot of like new directors don't. They want it to be like how they envision it in their head. Right. But no, that's the last thing you want because that's what everyone else is going to expect.
True.
Like, you want the actor to like, you want someone who can make interesting choices. And,
make you think something about the character you didn't think about that might cause you to rewrite the character.
Anyway, I could. This could be the voice acting interview if you want. I could go on forever.
Oh, go right ahead. I'm perfectly because again, hey, That's why one of my favorites. So I've met Rob Paulson. I've met so many voice actors. Jim Cummings is coming to a local convention soon. I cannot wait to meet him. I've met so many, in both animes and everything. Steve Bloom, Chris Sabat.
Jim Cummings, like that guy. Yeah. There's so many iconic characters that guy.
Oh yeah, Darkwing, Winnie the Pooh, Tigger. Even ones that you might not want to hear again, like Bonkers. Even that, though, just knowing. I know, yeah, because you remember
Bonkers. Yeah.
There's a reason why in DuckTales they made a joke about him getting being the butt monkey and just getting tossed around. It's like, yeah, who remembers Bonkers?
Why do I remember Bonkers?
Oh, that voice. So. You have 2 games you're working. It's obviously 2 games you're working on. Do you have anything else? Do you start planning things out afterwards? You're done with a game, or do you have any other ideas you have cooking?
There's never a rhyme or reason. It's it's like whatever. If someone approaches me with something, or I see something I like, and I just happen to be in a position where I can I'm like finishing up something, or really, really like it. Like the new guys came at like a perfect time. Like I wasn't really doing very much. And I'm like, all right, sure. Why not? I wasn't, I wasn't working on a lot at the time. Strangeland came at a good time. It just depends. There's never a rhyme or reason to how I do it, ever.
Right.
I didn't go into business for myself because I'm a good businessman. I don't know.
Right.
But somehow managed to make things work for over 15 years, almost exactly 15 years.
Right. Because you become one of the go-to. Right.
I started. I made my first game in June of 2006. So, but it wasn't under the Wadjet label. That was Blackwell Legacy. So I don't know where to mark the date.
Right.
But yeah, it's been 15 years. Somehow I managed to make it work.
Yep, but your company has become right up there. Was like when people think about retro point and click adventure games, like when people were thinking about who could do a Loom sequel with Brian Moriarty, your name was one of those ones that people always go to.
I couldn't believe that. I did speak to him about that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you don't have the rights to it, but has anything ever come up? You don't
want to tangle with Disney.
No, you don't. Some people want to, but
not me.
yeah, I know. Especially now, I don't blame some of these guys who want the full IP rights, like Ron Gilbert wanting Monkey Island before he does anything. I don't blame them. It's like, it's just
baby.
Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, that's a question I should have opened up with. What games have influenced you the most? I just realized that's something you would ask at the beginning. I realized, why did I ask that first?
Good question. I mean, my influences change like all the time, but I guess like. One of my the first game I played where I thought I want to make a game like this was Discworld Noir.
Oh, yep,
I played it and it just not even ignoring the fact that it was Discworld, just like it just did something so interesting, and like the noir stuff, the way it just atmospherically, visually, just everything about it was just so interesting. I don't know how well the game holds up. I refuse to play it again to find out. But
I haven't played it in a while myself either.
I don't know if you can even get it to run now.
I know of a guy who does it online called Collection Chamber. He basically goes about making games playable, old games. Now, of course, once the game is sold, he'll take it off. But if it's not, he will post it up there, and unless he gets told to take it down, you can get it. He has all 3 Disc Noir.
I know the issue with it is that it was made using like certain, I don't know, somethings or another that it could actually only played in Windows 98.
Yeah. There's an emulator to do that, and he's used that. And basically, you just have an installer.
No one liked using Windows 98 in 1998.
Well, I know, good guy. It's so hard to do. I'm so grateful people make emulators like that because otherwise, those games will be lost.
Yeah, and I was so that. I mean, most people say, "Oh, it was inspired by Monkey Island." I mean, I like playing Monkey Island, but it didn't make me want to make a game like it. I remember playing Gabriel Knight back in the day, and
that's
wanting to do for New York what Gabriel Knight did for New Orleans.
And I say you succeeded there. I would say you definitely succeeded.
I think so too. I mean, there's certain I usually try to I'm insecure enough to be like very humble about most everything, but sometimes I allow myself a little bit. Like I think I
Oh
do.
yeah, I mean, you have a good feeling of like I've only been to New York
When
once.
people
But
tell me that
yeah.
they come to New York and do like a Blackwell tour, like I'm so happy.
Oh, if I wasn't there for one day, I would have done one. I would have
Mm.
so done one.
Like people take pictures like in Washington Square or wherever. I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. I love that. Yeah, no, you could do the Gabriel Knight New Orleans tour in 5 minutes because they're all
Oh
like right
yeah,
next to each
yeah.
other. But a game that made me think like this isn't really an adventure game, but there was Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem,
Oh yep,
which is
yep.
for the
On the
GameCube
GameCube.
of all things. And I remember when I played it, I remember thinking, I want to make a game that makes people feel like this.
Yeah.
Like I felt so good playing that game. Like it just the structure of it was just
Oh yeah,
amazing.
and it gives you feelings that out of nowhere you're like, especially the infamous you've lost, the computer error that pops up on a GameCube
You know,
game. You're like,
the funny thing is, I had forgotten about all those sanity effects. Like that was
yeah.
supposed to be the selling point, but just like the fact that you had all of these like generations of this family, all that sort of like
Oh yeah.
come together into this like one big story. I found that so cool, and like they revisit certain areas, they revisit certain locations like in different eras, and I just loved it. I loved it. It was just I played it through 3 times to get like the main ending. But yeah, so there was that. There was also Dragon Age Origins, of course.
Oh, of course.
When I played that, it was like, this is so fascinating.
Oh
like,
yeah, just the idea of how different, especially playing as the elves. That was like one of the biggest changes if you play as the elves.
It was one of the first games that made me feel like my choices actually had an impact.
Yeah.
And like a lot of those mid-era BioWare games, from like the original Knights of the Old Republic to whenever BioWare whenever EA took over.
So Mass Effect 1.
2. I still liked all the Mass Effects, but like after the last Mass Effect, they were kind of but I was always very inspired by that style of gameplay, which is why I made Unavowed. Because I wanted to make something that felt like that.
Right.
Because I wasn't able to get that feeling. I remember there was an interview by a former BioWare writer named Jen Hepler, who someone I went to summer camp with a long time ago.
Oh, really?
Which is a funny serendipitous coincidence, where she said that she wanted to skip the combat in the BioWare games to get to the dialogue stuff.
Oh yeah. And if I could be openly honest, I sometimes use cheats just so I can play through the game, just so I can do the story. I remember thinking like, that is exactly what I want. I want that. That is the adventure game of my dreams. Why isn't anyone making that game? And no one did make that game, so I made that game. So those are like some of my biggest inspirations. Also, in terms of content, like in terms of writers, I mean Terry Pratchett, Jim Butcher, Stephen King, Lawrence Block is a big one. And some others that I can't think of, but like those are my biggest influences. Definitely. So yeah, I mean, because for me, it's all adventure games, all of them. I never have one specific one because it's always different. Each one's always a different thing, different, even when it's the same creators. Like you look at Tim Schafer doing Full Throttle, you look at doing Grim Fandango. There's some similarities, but for the most part, it's still very different games, which I always love. Like again, even with you look at Unavowed, look at the Blackwell series. Now, the Blackwell series, artists aside, consistent for the most part. But then you have Unavowed, very different. But again, proving my point. It's just that's why I just love so much about this genre so much.
Thank you.
Just, but it's the story, because that's how I am. I'm a story guy. It's why I like comics. It's why I like so much entertainment. I'm in it for the story.
That's it as well. It's like that's what you remember the most about a lot of these things. It's like even going back to the BioWare stuff. Like if you look on forums and you look on like the discussions about stories about the games, it's never about like how you got past a tricky combat situation.
No, it's like who'd you romance or something.
Yeah, who'd you bang? What choice did you make here?
Exactly.
It's cool that like this character like knew this character. I'm like,
I'll be honest, my favorite always FemShep and Garrus. That's me. I always go for that because it is, especially Jennifer Hale's acting in it, but just
it's no question. You always got to choose FemShep. And I think for my first,
nothing against Mark Meir, nothing against him, but you could tell he was starting out, whereas Jen was already a pro.
Jen for Hale is like what always like sets
Jen
apart. a good voice actress for me is when I hear them and I don't realize it's them.
Oh yeah, exactly.
There's some people like you just know it's them. Like, oh, I know that guy. Jennifer Hale. Half the time, I don't realize it's her.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you hear her as Black Cat or in Spider-Man or Femme Shep or just so many roles that
she was in Avatar. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
like, she had only a small role, but you think
Jun was her name, I think.
She was Kyoshi.
Oh yeah, Kyoshi as well. She was
Avatar Kyoshi.
Yeah, Kyoshi. But she was also a girl named Jun who only appeared once with a giant lizard. And then later on, because fans wanted her back.
Well, what's amazing is like how in Legend of Korra, they had Kyoshi there for like one line, but they still brought in Jennifer Hale for that one line. It's like, how much money they must have spent just for that one line. Like that's
exactly. But a lot of these times, these voice actors, which I love so much about, is that they are the type of people who will come in to do that even for one line, and they might take because they love it so much.
I don't know the deal. I don't know the deal.
Oh, I know. But they love it so much. I mean, the fact these actors who, depending on the character, of course, they will do the raunchiest stuff with their characters if you let them.
Have you listened to the Blackwell bloopers?
Yep.
I mean,
good Lord.
I love Rebecca, but oh my God, yeah.
Oh jeez, yep.
So she makes the game gives the game like a Peggy 13 rating just by the blooper reel alone.
Exactly, because it's like it's a very different Rosa. Very different Rosa.
I mean, oh God, Rebecca, I haven't worked with her in so long, but I
know. Just that hearing her, and then when you hear him, like even Puzzle Bots, completely different character, but you're like,
oh yeah, she's nasty in Puzzle Bots.
She is definitely. She's a nasty. She's that type of strong girl who comes in, but it's like she dominates the room, but you don't really like. Yeah,
I think she was in Golden Wake as well. She was a reporter.
Yeah. Oh, working at stuff like Golden Wake and Wake and all that stuff. And Francisco, I'd love to get him on as well because I'd love to Ben Jordan and all that. But now he's
doing. Great that you're familiar with all the freeware games, and you seem to be familiar with a lot of freeware games.
Oh, I am very much familiar with a lot. I have them so many of them on my computer still that I play through once in a while.
That's so cool. Like because usually it's the folks who were fans of my freeware work and fans of my games before they went on Steam. And people say, oh yeah, I played your games when they came out in 2006. And I'm like, well, if it wasn't for you, like the folks who bought our stuff back then, I wouldn't have survived long enough to get on Steam. And so I owe the early fans just so much. So
And for me, I'm one of those who I like their work. I stick through it all the way through. And now Francisco, he's doing his own stuff now. He's no longer with Wadjet, right?
No, that was kind of a Charlotte was a work for hire thing, and I wish I could have kept him on. I felt I think I felt worse about it than he did. But it's adventure games take a long time to make.
Oh yeah,
and keep him on salary when I couldn't be sure how well the next game would do.
Lamplight City was his next one, I think he did.
Yeah, and he I was also kind of going through Unavowed, which was taking up all my attention, and I just could not give Lamplight. He wanted to just publish with me instead,
right?
And I just couldn't give it the attention it needed. And I played it. I'm like, look, I have so many ways I would want to change this, but I think if we want to stay friends,
right?
And I'm so
stressed.
I'm so stressed right now. I will not be able to give this the attention that it needs or deserves. I think you're better off. You don't really need a publisher. I'm saying this as one. You don't really need one. And
I've really liked it too. It's very, very interesting of a take of adventure games. He is changing the styles of it when he's doing it. Rosewater, he's kind of coming out too.
And he found a publisher that could actually give him money, which I think is a better fit for him. He actually gets money to work on the game, as opposed to me, where I can't do that. It's just sort of I can basically I'm the opposite of most publishers, where I will usually give you a lot of feedback. I will play your game. I will help with voice acting. I will help with production. I just can't give you money. I will give you a larger royalty at the end.
Right.
But usually publishers do the opposite. They will just give you money and let you get on with it. I'm the opposite.
Right. But in the end, though, things have worked out. I've not seen one dud from you at all.
Usually you don't hear about them.
Hey, I played every single one.
Don't jinx it, man. Don't jinx it.
I didn't say anything about coming up. I just said I have played them all the ones that have released. Not one dud. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
I'm not making any assumptions. I'm saying that. So
I
up
do
to this
appreciate
point.
it. I do appreciate that.
Yeah. So, well, I'm running out of things to talk about, and I got
I think
some
an
other
hour and a
stuff.
half is a good enough time to call it.
Yep. But again, thank you so much, guys. Anyone who's going to watch this afterwards, check out Wadjet Games. Anything by this guy, and anything he's been involved with, it's quality.
Oh my God. Thank you. God,
yep.
That my ego is not.
Yep. I can see your head swelling. I can see it swelling.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
And catch you guys all later.
Thank you. Bye, Robert.
Yep.